Welcome to the Dean's List, engaging conversations at the intersection of entrepreneurship, artistic expression, and holistic health. Experience wellness in full color, where fashion, beauty, and art blend with body, mind, and soul. Embark on a journey that dresses your aspirations in style, paints your life with beauty, and sculpts your well-being in every dimension. This is the Dean's List, where inspiration is always in session. Welcome to the Dean's List, where we are navigating the vibrant confluence of well-being, artistic expression, and entrepreneurial spirit. I'm your host, Alison Dean, and today we're seasoning our conversation with Aine McAteer, a masterful personal chef and food educator who blends culinary art with global culture. From the kitchens of Hollywood's elite to intimate workshops, Aine's journey is a vibrant exploration of how food enhances our health and happiness. Join us today as she dishes on the power of food, her creative adventures around the world, and the joy of sharing her flavorful wisdom through teaching, writing, and designing. Hello, Aine.
Hi, Alison. So nice to see you and to be part of your wonderful podcast. I've been listening to your podcast as I cook. I'm quite inspired.
I love you. Okay, so let's dig in.
Okay.
Your journey into the world of food and health began as a personal quest to address a health issue in your teens. So can you share a little bit more about that initial inspiration and how it propelled you into becoming a personal chef?
Oh, gosh. And how long do we have? An hour? I discovered the power of food quite young. I grew up in Ireland, where my favorite foods were from the cows that roamed in the fields. I learned to milk a cow as a kid. I loved milk, butter, cheese, anything. I remember thinking, I'm just the milk queen. I used to get up earlier than my siblings in the morning because we used to get milk from the local farmer. My dad was a school teacher, so he didn't have a farm. But we used to get these cans of milk that would sit out overnight. And in the morning, it'd have this lovely layer of cream on top. So that was my heaven, to have that in my porridge every morning with a sprinkling of sugar. And but in childhood, I was constantly plagued by coughs, colds, runny noses. I remember we used to get these eye discharges where we'd wake up in the morning and couldn't, just excess. And so, but there was no connection really made between the foods we were eating and what was going on. I got pneumonia, and it was just, I was told it was because I went out with my hair wet. So not really looking at the internal environment and what we were putting in our bodies. But, we grew up in a farming area, so we had lots of fresh vegetables. We grew a lot of our own veggies. But I remember as a teenager, my friend's father was a butcher, and I witnessed a cow being slaughtered. And I loved the cows because they gave me my favorite foods. And I just thought, okay, I'm not eating cows anymore. So I became vegetarian and had more cheese and more dairy to get my protein, and continued to, just get sick, where I was constantly getting these coughs and colds, a lot of sort of respiratory issues. And then I started having sort of menstrual issues. I wasn't really getting my period, and a friend suggested, I jumped forward to sort of my early 20s, a friend who was a nurse suggested, why don't you get your thyroid checked? And so I spent a day in a hospital where, they did extensive testing and discovered that I had an underactive thyroid. And I was told then that I'd have to take medication for the rest of my life. And I was a young, fairly aware person. I thought I was pretty cool. I'd become a vegetarian, and I was in the Irish countryside, but my family had moved to Dublin at this stage, and I took the medication, and I felt amazing. Because I guess when your thyroid is, I had felt sort of a little bit sluggish, and after I eat, I'd always feel a little sort of drained rather than fulfilled by my foods. But I thought about it, and I thought, I'm like 20. I don't want to have to take medication for the rest of my life and be dependent on this pill. So I just said, I'm going to stop taking it. And I stopped taking it, and I literally couldn't function. And I realized that my thyroid had probably ceased to function because I was depending on the medication. And I remember just feeling so drained and exhausted, but still determined. I mean, back then, this was in the 70s in Ireland, like maybe 74, 75. We didn't have Google. We didn't have access to the kind of information we have available today. So I remember just going into bookshops and, really trying to find out what I could do to heal this thyroid condition. And I remember walking down this little street in Dublin, and I see this sign, beautiful sun, and it said Golden Dawn. And I walked in, and it was a macrobiotic restaurant with a little health food store in the front that was getting ready to open up in a couple of weeks. And I remember just walking in, the people in there, they just looked healthy. I mean, back then, they were energized. So I feel it was like my angels had guided me to this place, just in a little side street in Dublin. And macrobiotics was weird back then. We were the weirdos. So I just walked in, and I was like, I've come home. I want to work here. I told them about my condition and said, you need to cut out all dairy, all sugar, all refined foods, and you need to start eating seaweed and, just whole grains. They explained a little bit. And I said, well, you guys are hiring me. I'm not leaving. So I ended up working there for 2 years. And during that time, my health changed so dramatically. Before, when I'd eat, I'd have to sleep. I was so exhausted. And I remember thinking, food is supposed to be fueling me. There's something amiss here. But when I started eating, cutting out, a lot of it is while we stop eating, but then we're substituting it. And the food was beautiful. They had a couple of great chefs there. And it was so enlightening to me. And I remember I used to be called wiry when I was a kid because I had really wiry hair and I had I used to get this rough skin. My hair started to grow out much softer and, everything, because it's all a reflection of what we're putting in our body, everything you see externally. So it was just the most enlightening experience for me to feel the power of just changing my diet. Simple, delicious changes. I mean, the food was so good. And it was sort of a co-op situation where, I'd work part-time in the kitchen and then work out front. And then we'd host a lot of workshops there and have visiting teachers come in. I mean, nobody was super qualified. Our local acupuncturist, I think, had taken a weekend course or something. I was the acupuncturist. But then after working there for a couple of years and feeling these changes, I really felt that this was something I wanted to pursue. So I went to London, and because Ireland was a little bit of a small pond, there was nothing beyond what we were doing at the Golden Dawn. I found out there was a macrobiotic center in London. So I went there and I took a course in shiatsu and macrobiotic cooking and healing with foods. And that was wonderful. But in our shiatsu courses, we were studying from the books of this guy, Ohashi. And I was reading his book one day and he mentions a school in New York. So I thought, what am I doing in London if I can be studying with him in New York? So I think I got a bank loan and bought a one-way ticket when you could. And I moved to New York and just taking a leap of faith. And I went with a friend, Jillian, who I'd met on my shiatsu course. She wanted to go and study art in New York. So we got a little apartment in Ludlow Street. And God, I remember my first day in New York. Everyone had said, don't talk to strangers. People thought I was crazy. Heading up to New York with like probably 60 pounds in my pocket. And I knew I had to get a job right away. We got a little cheap apartment in Ludlow Street where we lived with a lot of cockroaches and, just back in the day. They used to fly around the apartment. But my first day, I went out and I remember saying, I'm going to find Broadway. But so I got in a subway and somehow I ended up way out in Brooklyn. I didn't realize that Broadway ran all the way through Manhattan I remember going way out to Brooklyn, and then I got the train coming back in, and I met this elderly gentleman who kind of took me under his wing, and he took me to some restaurants, and I ended up getting 3 jobs on my first day. And one of them was in a macrobiotic restaurant. And the other one was making Irish soda bread at Pineapple Dance Studio.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it was a whole evolution. And then in New York, I really sought out the best teachers I could find. I was never ambitious. Academia was never really my thing. I was always a bit more creative and more inquisitive to learn, through experience. So I would say New York was like my university. I was studying shiatsu. I was learning from really good teachers and macrobiotic counselors and working in the restaurant. I wasn't a chef there because it was a very Japanese restaurant. Okay. So it was mostly male kitchen. But it was just a whole, and throughout this, I wasn't thinking, I want to be a personal chef. I remember when I went to one of the courses up at the Kushi Institute, I used to go up and take courses. Michio Kushi is one of the people who brought macrobiotics to the West. And they had wonderful courses there. And at the end of one of the courses, we all had to get up and sort of express to the class what we wanted to do with our education we just received. And I was sitting there and watching people getting up saying, I want to open a macrobiotic restaurant. I want to be a macrobiotic counselor. I want to have a healing center. All I could think of was, I want to be able to do the splits.
Oh.
And that's kind of how I've lived my life, and I thought, I can't say that, but I was thinking, I don't want to fit into any little box. I want to, because in the yoga classes that were part of it, I felt these restrictions in my body, and we kind of accept as we go through life. The older we get, the more, if we didn't do ballet when we were babies, we're never going to be able to do it, So I got up and I just said it. I said, I want to be able to do the splits. And then I went on to, and everyone just laughed. And I went on to explain, well, I just want to always strive for greater levels of freedom in everything that I do. And that's going to be an evolution. It's not going to be, okay, this is me and I'm a chef. I'm a macrobiotic counselor. It's just, that's not my spirit, to be confined in that way within a label or people call me a professional chef and I'm like, oh, you're talking about me? I went for a little cooking trial lately, and they were talking about, asking how long I'd been a chef, and I said, well, I've been cooking all my life, but I guess people started calling me a chef at a certain point, so I guess. But anyway, they thought it was kind of fun.
When did that transition happen for you, right? So I guess after all this knowledge and living in New York, when did that journey begin of now you're cooking for someone else?
I was always creative, whatever the medium was. I made my own clothes growing up. From the age of 8, I started sewing and making clothes, and I love to knit. I love to do beadwork, and so when I started, actually, my very first cooking job was when I was traveling around. This was when I was about 18, and I was traveling for the summer, and I ended up just by fluke getting a job in a pub in London. And
Okay.
it was a live-in situation, and all the staff lived in. There were some young travelers from New Zealand and Australia. And we had a Jamaican chef. And after I was there about a week, the Jamaican chef did a runner in the night. She left and left a note, said she had gone back to Jamaica. So the Irish owner said, he goes, Anya, would you be our chef? And I'm like, well, I've never been a chef before, but why not? So anyway, I kind of embraced the role of being a chef for this pub. And it was in my very vegetarian days, and I had to make steak and kidney pies and sausage rolls and stuff for the pub. But I was very, when sometimes you're a bit younger maybe and you're discovering something new, and I was quite evangelical about it. I wanted to change the world, but here I was having to make these meat dishes. But I made an old friend in the pub, this guy who used to drink there all the time, this Irish guy, and I'd send him to the butcher shop for me. And then, because I wouldn't go into a butcher shop to get my meats and stuff, and then I go to the vegetable markets. I remember hearing my boss on the phone saying, I've got this amazing Irish chef, you've got to come over for dinner. I'm like, wow, he's talking about me.
Yeah.
Because I did, I was just having fun. And, everyone put on a bit of weight because I'd cook all the food for the pub and I'd make dinners for the staff. But, everyone worked till midnight and they'd come up and I'd have a midnight feast. So it was the first time in my life that I think, got a little plump.
Well, yes, I think pub work does that to you, I think.
Yeah, and eating at midnight and going to bed, eating pizzas and pastas and homemade breads. And I was just having so much fun with it. But
I love that.
Yeah, so that was my very first. And then, when I was in New York and I was working in these restaurants, and I somehow or another, I started getting cooking work. I remember one of the macrobiotic counselors, who was kind of one of my mentors, Bill Spear, he asked me if I'd come up and cook for him and his family a few days a week. And then he had this friend, he's a fairly well-known flautist, Paul Winter, who was his neighbor. And so Paul found out about me, and Paul had me cook for him too. And so I'd go up there and I'd just cook and cook and cook for a few days, and then discovered I gave shiatsu as well. So I'd give them all shiatsu. It was a lot of work. I'd come back to New York and then just get back into my whatever I was doing there. But that was kind of my first cooking job. And then this guy in Lubbock, Texas found out about me somehow through the Cushy Institute. And I get this phone call, when we had the old voicemails.
Yeah.
This is Carlos and Christmas Carl Cobbis and Corn Cob from Lubbock, Texas. And you're going to come down here and you're going to save my life. And he was pretty much dying from cancer. So I went down there, and he was already on morphine, and, it was a funny situation. But within a week or so, he was up and walking around the block just from eating healthy food. So I had a very interesting time in Lubbock, Texas. I used to be on the news. They used to advertise my cooking classes on the news.
That's amazing.
So anyway, that was, and then from there, it kind of evolved, the whole being a chef thing. I had also had shiatsu clients because, I trained in my shiatsu course over a couple of years, and I had private clients for that. But then I started getting more people wanting me to cook for them.
And they just found you, like, through the grapevine.
Yeah,
they just
it's always how my life has worked. I've never looked for a job ever, ever, ever.
It's like, that's the dream, Anya, when you don't have to look and they just find you. They just find you. I love that so much.
It's always from left field. It's always random. I remember a palmist reading my palm when I was in my 20s, an Indian palmist. And he was really good. I mean, a lot of what he said actually manifested, but he said, one thing he said, you're going to be surrounded by rich and famous people in your life. And he said, if you're ever intimidated, always remember they need you more than you need them. And
I
I've
love
had to
that.
remember that a lot walking into the houses because, now a lot of my clients are fairly iconic in the entertainment world. So
Hmm.
walking into their homes it can be a little
They need me.
daunting because these people are so much larger than life in the media. But then you meet them and they're just people. And
Yeah.
they
They're
do
like
need
cats
me
and
more
dogs.
than I need. I mean,
Yeah,
they
I
need
love
it.
that so much. Okay, this is a fun question. So, you've been recognized for your ability to sort of debunk the myth that healthy food can't be delicious.
Mhm.
Okay. So, are there like any key principles or key techniques that you use to ensure dishes are both healthy but also appealing to the palate?
Yeah. um, for me, food, it has to be enjoyment. I think of
Yeah.
sort of seducing someone in a healthy direction rather than, forcing them or, um, so flavor has always been up there, you know.
Flavor. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, one thing that I really, really stayed true to throughout my entire career is the energy that goes into the food. I
Mm,
meditate every morning, and I don't think you should ever eat the food from an angry chef. And I think that
no.
really translates. I remember, um, I'll name drop a little bit. I was on Kauai and I got this job. It was cooking for Robert Redford. And
Oh.
he was supposed to come he came a day early. So I got a call saying, Robert's on the island. He wants food like this evening. So I just whipped up my leftovers. I had some leftovers and added a few, made it look pretty. And I went over and brought him dinner. And
Hmm.
anyway, the next day when I came and was cooking for him, he goes, Anya, I don't think of myself as a spiritual man, but when I ate your food, I had a spiritual experience. He said, whatever you're
That's
putting in that food, he said, I felt it nourished my soul. I said, well, you're obviously a spiritual man. To be able to detect the energy in food, you have to have some
mhm.
level of spiritual awareness.
Connection.
But
It's
yeah,
amazing.
so definitely, I think you can serve someone healthy food, but if it's not cooked, I always have a sense of intention when I'm feeding someone.
Yes.
And I think that's
Okay.
one
Cook
of the
with
most
love.
nourishing things. And
Yeah.
also, just from so many years working with food, you really get an understanding of how spices work, how flavors come together. It's
Right.
alchemy, you're bringing these ingredients together and
Mm.
creating something that's going to nourish, that's going to go inside somebody's body and nourish them. So,
Yeah.
you want all of their senses to be captivated by that. So,
It's a great answer. It's a great answer.
a
I
friend,
would
a friend,
say,
a client I'm cooking for up in Vancouver these days, he was eating my food and he goes, Anya, when I eat your food, I feel like my whole inside are being loved.
oh,
That
I love this. I
was
love
so
that.
sweet. I guess it's my
I feel
way
like
of loving.
this is like a t-shirt line that you can do of just the quotes of all these people that are saying these things about your food. Like you just wearable like these are all like magical things that these people are saying. I love
Yeah.
that so much.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
magic
so
is a big
yeah.
word for me. The
Well,
magic.
I mean, but they're having experiences that are kind of otherworldly maybe on some level. So I feel like, there's a little imbue of something extra.
Yeah. I mean, I never think I'm this amazing chef, but somehow or another, people
You are.
respond to my food. So,
But yeah.
and
Okay. And so
also
yeah.
there's like can be a lot of ego in the chef world, but if I
Mm.
know if I go into the kitchen coming from a place of ego, my food is not going to have the same effect on people, you know?
Well said. That's like so well said.
Yeah.
Right. It's a humbling thing.
Yeah.
Like you want, yeah. Okay. So you have a cookbook called Recipes to Nurture,
I,
which it integrates macrobiotic principles, organic produce, and you have a whole host of nourishing dishes in this cookbook. Cookbook. So I think for some of the audience, they might be familiar with macrobiotics, but can you explain sort of the concept of what we've already talked about it a little bit, but like what is it and how does it still influence your recipes today? So like where has that connection, I guess, remained consistent?
well, macrobiotics was originally brought to the West by a Japanese gentleman or two. There was the Kushis on the East Coast and then the Aiharas on the West Coast of America. And the sort of the founding father of macrobiotics was George Osawa, who
Okay.
would give himself disease and then cure it using food, using whole grains.
Wow.
And he was very into the whole thing of chewing your food, like you're supposed to drink your food and eat your liquids.
Yes. Yes.
So, and really it's an understanding, they use the Taoist principles of yin and yang and sort of understanding how that manifests in food. It's a long story, and I can, I don't think we have time to go.
I'd say what's the billboard of like macrobiotics? So like the overarching of like what macrobiotics is for someone that's like just hearing you today. If someone were to say, I really want, or that's something that could resonate for me, what would be the, like, I guess the pillars of it that people would need to follow to achieve a macrobiotic diet?
I mean, for me, it's really understanding how to create balance. Using the principles of yin and yang, which are opposites, which manifest in all around us. We have male and female, darkness and light, sweet and salty. There's a lot of people, I think, who still very much adhere to the Japanese way of eating. It's the same in Ayurveda. People, eat just Indian food, but these are principles that can be applied to all areas of our life and our diet without getting too stuck in, a certain way of eating or using certain ingredients. I remember when my book was published, I found some discussion and they were saying, she says it's a macrobiotic book, but she uses spices, so it can't be macrobiotic. But, maybe in Japan, they don't use as many spices like paprika and, but in Ayurveda, those spices are very used therapeutically. So, that's why I don't even call myself a macrobiotic chef. Even when I was doing it, I was learning to really have a better understanding of how food affects my body, and eating, a lot of it has to do with eating foods from your environment and that are in season. Because that helps us to be more balanced and more in tune with our environment.
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's not really a banner. That's more of a paragraph. But
no.
Anyway.
I mean, I remember there was one restaurant in LA. I forget what it's called.
Anne Gentry's restaurant, Real Food Daily.
Yeah, no, but it wasn't that one either. But I've been to Real Food Daily. But there was another one, like Beverly Hills area. It was small.
Oh yes, I remember that little place.
Yeah, and I can't think of the name, but that one was really, I mean, it was very clear they were like a macrobiotic restaurant, right? Like Real Food Daily was more vegetarian vegan, right? Like we're vegan.
Yeah, even though Anne's background was in macrobiotics, but yeah.
That's interesting. But that was my only touch point really to macrobiotics, was when I would go to that restaurant in Bev Hills.
Yeah.
And
so it's
anyway,
it relies a lot on whole grains, beans, seaweed, vegetables.
Yeah.
But a lot of my time, when I started working as a personal chef, people didn't necessarily want to eat a lot of beans and whole grains. They wanted their fish and their chicken. And these days I'm cooking a lot of wild meats. I make alligator tacos every Monday. Yep.
I love that so much.
Wild boar,
Um,
elk, bison.
I love it.
But back to
You
my
bite.
book, sadly, it's out of print. It was published in 2005. It actually got a Gourmand World Cookbook Award. It was voted best health and nutrition cookbook in the world, which was a huge honor.
Wow.
But sadly, it's out of print. And then I went on. A publisher in Croatia published and then signed me to do two more books, which were published in Croatia. One on vegan
Okay.
desserts and one on healthy food for children. I'm not very disciplined with writing. I have a lot of books which are at various stages of being written, and then I got to blog for Oprah for a year on her website. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
it's still on there. A lot of food articles I had to come up with, and I could write on anything related to food or health. I even
Cool.
have one story on cooking with my angels, and then I'd have to have there was a recipe each week. I did it for a year. So,
That's so awesome.
there's been a lot of opportunities like that over the years, but I get so busy with my personal chef work that to focus on writing my
All these
books
other
and
things.
stuff has been a challenge.
Yeah, the balancing. Okay, so I think this is a really interesting question for someone like you who's cooking for a lot of interesting people. Obviously, the culinary world can move quickly, and there are growing debates about like sustainability of food sources and ethical eating, ethical practices, ethical all these things.
Yeah.
So curious like where you stand in all of this and how do you incorporate some of these principles of maybe sustainability into your cooking?
Yeah, that's a very important question. And when I did start integrating meats, cooking meats after being a vegan chef for many years, sourcing those meats was a really big part of it. I actually have hunters who send me meats for my current client. I remember he wanted a wild turkey, and I only found this out like 3 days before Christmas, and I had to join a wild turkey hunting group on Facebook. But I got a wild turkey within a day. So yeah, I mean, I really want I want to learn to hunt, which is crazy, but I feel like I'm cooking these foods. I tried to sign up for a hunting trip in Oklahoma, but it filled up. It was with this guy who's very popular. He has really beautiful cookbooks. One of them is Buck Buck Moose. Hank Shaw, but his hunting trip filled up really fast. Then I started watching YouTube videos of hunting, and I thought, oh God, could I do it? Could I pull the trigger, But, I'd like to feel that I could be part of that if I'm using these foods. And, eventually I'd love to have my own home where I could grow, have a garden.
Yeah.
Yesterday I was up in Yountville, where what the name of the guy, the French Laundry guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And their beautiful garden just across the road.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm like, that's a dream to be able to grow. And, and I know there are ways, like even in a small area, to just grow something,
vertical.
make sprouts, something where you have a deeper connection with your food and where it comes from. Right. I remember teaching a cooking class in Hawaii and to adults. And I had these garbanzo beans. And I said, I bought them dry, I soaked them overnight. And someone said, oh, I thought they came in cans. And sadly, that's the relationship a lot of people have with their foods,
That's true.
And, I always strive and aspire to be more sustainable, even in the use of plastics and everything, but I know I can always do better in that, Sometimes when you're rushing around and it's, it's what's happening out there. But I really hope that, the movement towards more sustainability grows and, that
it has to.
Yeah.
It has to. Have you been like influenced by any like dietary trends like, keto, the carnivore diet. Like, there's all these things that come around.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
does
Well,
does that have an impact?
not personally, but
Or-
I have clients, like my client that I'm going to cook for next week up in Vancouver. He's doing the keto diet and feels
Okay.
really good on it. He's an actor and has to take his shirt off, So, um, but he looks great, and I go up there and I fill his freezer for a couple of weeks. Every few weeks I go.
Yeah.
So I do the keto, and then I'm doing the fairly carnivorous diet for my other client in LA. So, just in that way, I'm affected by it because I have to, I always when I have a client, I like to, listen to what they want and then put my
Right.
own spin on it.
Yeah. That makes it fun for you too. Right.
But
That makes sense.
I'm very flexible with my own diet these days. I'm up in Napa and enjoying I went to the Healdsburg Food and Wine Festival where there were like hundreds of vintners all offering free wine and beautiful food, chefs serving beautiful, really beautiful food. And it's such a culinary mecca up here.
Oh my gosh, totally. I'm like, I want to go. I want to go Anya next year. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Can we go back to Lubbock, Texas for a sec? Because I'm curious, I wanted to sort of dig into you being a part of so many different healing journeys for different people that have had, serious health conditions. For the gentleman in Texas, was that a success story? So were you able to?
No, he did pass. He was elderly. He was at stage 4 cancer, but his quality of life really improved at the end.
That's amazing.
He was able to come off his morphine and, go for walks and And then I had another client who had MS. And she did great. We were able to really make shifts in her health.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
With the food, with your food.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right.
And usually, when I go, I often say cooking is my foot in the door. I would find myself in her laundry room, changing out the cleaning products she's using. In her bathroom, looking at her makeup. When I'm food shopping, because she's a performer, so she constantly slathering on it. Because everything we put on our skin and our hair, it's all in our environment. It's all absorbed. The detergent we're using to wash our clothes, the shampoos we use, everything is food on some level. So I would find myself changing out a lot of things. And, I'll often go to it. She tended to work out really hard with a trainer, but she didn't have the chi energy. She was working her muscles, but unless there's that kind of inner energy there to fuel the muscles. So I'd go to yoga classes with her. I've gone to Pilates classes with clients just to encourage them to, move their bodies.
You're like the health helper, all dimensions of health and wellness.
Because, if you're really working towards better health with someone, there's so many levels. Food is a big part of it. But we're feeding ourselves on many levels.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm curious. Oh, yes. I'm curious because you imbue wellness into the lives of so many people. I'm curious what wellness means to you. It's a question I like to ask everyone. But also because of, your very dynamic career and your schedule, how do you prioritize your own wellness and what does that mean to you?
Yeah. I never start my day. I could never jump out of bed and jump into the kitchen. I always have to take at least an hour. I meditate every morning, take my cup of tea, and I always do some form of exercise. These days I do 100 squats. every
Oh,
morning.
wow.
And I love to hike. I love a nature hike.
Yeah.
So I'll always schedule in things that nourish me. Where I have acupuncture regularly, and I really try to eat. I start my day, with something that will alkalize my body, whether it's, warm water with some lemon or a nice green juice that I've made, or
Yeah.
and I cook for myself. When I have a day off, I cook myself a beautiful breakfast in my garden. I always take time. I take a nap every single day, even if it's just for 10
Love that.
minutes. So,
Love that.
because if when you're in the business of nourishing other people, if you're not nourished yourself, you have much less
Yeah.
to give.
Right. That's,
Yeah.
yes, spot on.
Yeah.
Right. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
You must be nourished to nourish others,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's a great answer. Okay, so the food industry often faces criticism for not being environmentally or health conscious enough. Although I feel like there's different upticks. I think it also depends on where you are in the world, right?
Yeah.
So, because America is so different than Europe
Mm-hmm.
or South America. I mean, there's just Japan. I mean, anyway.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts overall on that? Like, just the food industry? Because I feel like when we say the food industry, are we talking about the US? But how do you address some of that with your own cooking practices? Obviously, you like to go to the source, which is great.
Yeah.
Like you'll go right to the hunter.
Yeah.
Um, but is there anything else that you pay attention to as relates to, especially produce or
I mean, I love to try and support local farmers, support local
yeah,
food producers as much as possible, the smaller businesses. And I
yep,
love when I find an alternative to the big, health food conglomerates.
yeah,
Um,
yep.
I spent the night in Cambria on the way up here, and I found a beautiful little health food store that had the best sourdough bread. Um,
Oh,
I brought a loaf up. I'm going to stop on the way back. But yes, I love to find those little smaller stores, that are
yes,
selling healthy ingredients. Um,
yeah, yeah,
because, corporations are trying to take over, and a lot of the
yes,
little food producers eventually get bought up by these corporate entities, which is sad. And then the quality goes down. When
100%.
Nestle
Yeah.
buy all the little, health
Mm-hmm.
food,
Mm-hmm.
smaller companies, it's too bad.
Totally.
Um, but I try to put my support elsewhere.
Right. Yeah.
So
Being very mindful of
yeah,
where your dollars are
yeah,
going. I think that
yeah,
that's something that we all can do is be mindful of how we're spending our
yeah,
money and where we're investing ourselves.
yeah,
So I think that that's a
yeah,
valid point given how so much is big
yeah,
business. Okay.
yeah.
So reflecting on your very extensive career at this point, do you have like Anya's greatest accomplishment? Is there something that comes to mind for you as like, I am so just impressed with myself for this one thing? Or is that too
Oh,
hard?
I think to still have joy in what I'm
Hmm.
doing.
Yeah.
I think I still get joy out of cooking for people and nourishing people, and so I think, I've officially retired. I'm an old age pensioner, as they would say in Ireland, but I'm busier than ever, and I'm still aspiring to sort of share the gift that I have, find creative ways to do that, maybe be less
Yeah.
tied into my work as a personal chef and more available to do sort of fun, creative things.
Yeah. I think that's such a beautiful reflection, Anya, that you still have joy
Yeah,
because that's so maybe not so tangible to so many people.
yeah.
So that's a beautiful statement. I love that so
Oh,
much. Um, okay. I hope you will humor me with this, but like for a little bit of fun, Curious if you have any memorable stories or lighthearted moments. I mean, you mentioned one with Robert Redford, so you did already give us a nice little gem with that.
Mm-hmm.
But anything else that you can share in how you might have affected the wellness journeys or just journeys of anybody that we might know of, like the Robert Redfords of the world?
Um, I think, just let's see, getting to cater Ringo Starr's 83rd and upcoming 84th birthday is, that's kind of an honor.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild. I feel like Pierce Brosnan, I think on your website, you had a quote from Pierce
Oh, yeah.
Brosnan. So I don't know if he like quoted something in your book, but I was
Yeah.
like, that's cool.
There was a little quote from Pierce, a fellow Irishman. I remember it was funny when I first met Pierce, I was being introduced to him on Kauai. And the person introducing me was going, Anya is one of the top chefs in the world. She's cooked for blah, blah, and blah, blah. And I looked at him, I'm like, Pierce, I'm just winging it. Because I didn't want to have all these expectations. Top chef in the world, go on. I'm just cooking his dinner. And he goes, Anya, people think I'm a great actor, but I'm just winging it too. I said, okay, good, common ground.
That's amazing. I feel like, yes, there's so many stories that you have, Anya.
Well,
yes.
There's a lot of stories. If you could get me, I remember when my cookbook was published, and I was doing all the press for it. Yeah. And I was over in Ireland and having interviews, and they were dying to get some stories. And this one woman was like, let's just have some wine and get you a little drunk and get some stories out of you. It was at the end of the day I just went over and did one day. It was back-to-back interviews and photo shoots and, and you publish something. And of course, everybody, I remember when I was in Australia, I went on live TV and they told me to come in prepared to cook a dish, and
right.
So I thought I'd be able to talk about health and the health benefits of my food. And, so I prepped this soup ready to go. And I went into the studio in the morning. Nobody told me anything. I had to find everything myself. And then the producer came in and started counting down 10. And then these two big, tall, blonde women came in to interview me, and they were firing questions at me like, oh, am I going to look like Nicole Kidman if I eat like this? I was like dodging bullets because I'm not out there on the media talking about my client. So I was trying to come up. I said, well, obviously when we eat healthy, we're going to look better, so, and Robert, blah, blah, blah. They were just firing questions at me. So, it can be interesting when.
Yeah. Interesting is a word. Okay. Well, now I'm going to fire some questions at you, but I won't ask you about any of the famous people. So This is a quick fire, Anya. First thing that comes to mind, nothing that scary, I don't think. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Oh gosh, I'm neither.
Oh, you're a middle bird.
I'm a middle bird. I like to get up early, but I like to have my time in the morning.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not a real night owl. I like to get my 8 hours sleep.
Okay. All right. So maybe you are kind of an early bird.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Coffee or tea or both?
Both. I love my teas and different teas for different times of the day, but I love one cup of coffee. And I for a long time, I've been making cold brew.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite color?
Maybe green.
That's very Irish of you.
Yeah.
Okay. What was I think already the first, actually, what is the first job you ever had? Like paying job that you ever had where you got a paycheck or cash or something?
The Bank of Ireland.
Oh, wow.
Oh, no, the pub I worked in before that.
The pub. Okay. Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite cuisine? If you had to choose.
I love Thai. And I love
Mm,
Japanese. Like, I really dream of going to Japan and eating in the temples and,
yeah.
just.
Have you been to that restaurant in LA? Is it called Anaka? No. There's like one in LA where like anytime you go there, it's never going to be the same dish. Like she captures. I've been there one
No,
time.
you need to tell
I
me
was
where that is. I want to go.
okay. I'll send you.
I
I'll
think
send you a
we're
link.
going
Wait,
to a Japanese pop up in a distillery in Napa tonight.
what's the favorite country you've ever traveled to?
I don't think I've traveled to my favorite country yet.
Oh,
Um, I still love Ireland.
I love that.
Wow.
I still need to go to
I
Ireland, so
enjoy
that's on the list.
India. There's aspects of India I really enjoy,
Mm,
especially the southern part. I love southern Indian cuisine.
amazing. What's the one app that you can't live without?
Oh my God, really? Um, Google
Mm-hmm.
Maps, is that one?
Sure, Google Maps. Yep, totally an app. Yep, that counts. What's the one word you would use to describe your career?
Surprising.
I love it. If you could have any entrepreneur as a mentor for a day, anyone, who would it be?
Oh my goodness. Julia Childs.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a book that has significantly influenced your mindset, how you think about things?
I mean, years ago, like, I
Hmm.
think Herman had The Prophet, Cal Gibran. Like, I used to
Okay.
quote that to my mother. Your children are not your children. You're simply the bows from which your children as living arrows are shot forth, you know.
Oh my God. I love it. Okay. Besides your own business, I kind of know what you're going to say right now. I'm kind of leading you with this. What is another favorite small business that you want to shout out?
Well, someone I know, like,
Yeah.
oh, my two sisters, Josie's Botanicals, who I turned
Yeah.
everyone on to, and Your Beautiful Skin Therapy.
I
My
was like, I
sister,
knew.
I turn
Okay.
everybody on. Like, all my clients can't live without their Josie Botanicals, my sister Barbara's amazing skincare products and candles.
I love that. If you could instantly acquire, I'm leading you with this one too, perhaps. If you could instantly acquire one new skill, what would it be?
Surfing.
I thought you were going to say hunting, but I like
Oh
surfing.
my God. No, I've been cooking for these women surfers and they inspire me so much. They're like wave dancers.
Oh
And I've
yeah.
done the
So
retreats and I'm kind of scared of waves, but I still aspire to learn to surf.
I love that. If you could time travel to any period in history, which era would you visit?
Maybe the 20s.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And if you weren't doing this, what else would you be doing?
I think I often say if I wasn't in food, I'd be in fashion. I love to
I
make
believe that.
clothes. I love to design. I love to look at clothes and wear them and
Hmm.
buy them. And
Hmm. All that stuff.
yeah,
I know we're like sisters in that capacity.
yeah.
Okay. So only a couple questions left. With a career that has evolved into writing, teaching, what new opportunities do you see on the horizon for blending all of your culinary expertise with these other aspirations? And so in the next 5 years almost, what do you see for yourself?
Oh my goodness. I've always thought of doing a fun little cooking show, creative,
Oh,
that would involve sort of working with people. It would never be me standing in a studio, just it would have to be very fun, creative, interactive, and involve travel. Um,
yeah,
like, you know,
that's great. Yeah.
yeah, and I definitely want to try and get my books out there in some format, because I feel I have a lot to share. I get to share with one or two people in my work, when I'm cooking for people, but I feel that, I have a lot that I could share with people that would, people would enjoy.
Yes, I would agree with that. I'll be first to purchase a book, the next
Mhm.
book. Okay, so do you have any advice that you would give to anybody aspiring to like start their own business? They might be a chef, they might be a designer, they might be none of the above, but um, any advice to someone just starting something new?
I think just to take the leap of faith.
Hmm.
There's life is short. It goes by fast, and
Yeah.
I always think, I don't want to get to the end and look back with regrets,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just if you have a dream it. Um,
Yes.
yeah, I feel I've been very blessed in, just the things that have opened up for me in my career. But it's just because I've been open to them, and
Hmm.
try not to look at the obstacles, but just look at the opportunities.
That's a good bumper
Yeah.
sticker. Okay, is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have or that you were hoping I would?
No, I mean, I love your interviews. You just delve into everything, and look at us with our twin glasses.
I like it's a vibe. It's a vibe today.
It's a vibe.
Okay, so Anya, if anybody wants to find, I mean, if you Google Anya's name, her website will come up, and also her Oprah page will
I
come up,
know,
which I was like,
yeah. I don't know what's happened. It's just in the past 6 months, when I Google every once in a while, I Google my own name, see what I'm up to.
yeah,
And it's like every Oprah story has its own page now. And yeah,
yes, it's amazing. So it's just AinyaMcAteer.com, I think, right? Is the
yeah,
website?
on
Well,
McAteer.com. I'm not
yeah. So if you
very active on my website. I got it built
right,
by my friend in India. I just haven't been very active on it.
that's
I
fair.
thought I'd
Yeah.
blog and all that, but I haven't yet.
In due time.
Yeah,
You're busy. You're busy, Anya.
yeah.
Well, I'm so happy to have you here on the Dean's
I'm
List, a
so
very much
honored
Dean's
to
List
be on
approved.
it, Allison. I'd love to see it getting out to the world. You're so good.
Oh, bless you. And thank you all for tuning into this episode of the Dean's List. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to stay updated and follow us on Instagram at official_Dean's List and YouTube at It's Official Dean's List. I'm your host, Alison Dean. Until next time.